All right, today we're going to learn factoring polynomials. So some of this will be review, and then some of this will be new stuff, factoring by grouping. So for the first few parts, again, these two are just trinomials. So we want two numbers that multiply to get 28 and sum to get 11. Okay, so I know this is going to give me two factors. And then the numbers I'm looking for, I believe, are 4 and 7. So I have a plus 4 here and a plus 7 there. So 4 times 7 gives me 28, and then 4 combined with 7 gives me a sum of 11. So I'm done factoring that first example. The example here on the right, we would have to use slide and divide. Okay, so I'm going to slide the 3 over to the last term, and I'm going to multiply. So that gives me x squared minus 5x minus 36. Now I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to get 36 and sum to get negative 5. Those two numbers are 4 and negative 9. So then when I factor this, I have x plus 4 and x minus 9. Then I need to remember that I need to divide now by 3 because that's the number I slid over earlier. And so I get a final answer of 3x plus 4. So that didn't divide evenly, so I just throw it back in front. And then this one divides evenly, so that gives me x minus 3. So that would be my final factored problem for that example. All right, so then we have 3 more examples. These are trinomials, so we're going to factor them the exact same way we did just above. But what I want you guys to notice is this really isn't a quadratic, but it goes in this order. It has the highest degree of 4, and then it goes 2, and then none. So all of these share that in common. So we're going to treat this just like this was a square and this was an exponent of 1. So for this one, again, I know I'm going to have two factors. This, instead of just being x, is going to be x squared now. And then again, I'm still looking for two numbers that multiply to get 14 and sum to get negative 9. Those two numbers are 2 and 7, and both of them need to be negative. So negative 2 goes there and a negative 7 there. And so that is where I finish that problem. Okay. Then I'm going to do this last one. We do have to slide and divide. So I slide the 3 over. It gives me x to the 4th power minus 11x squared plus 30. And now I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to get 30, but sum to get negative 11. Those two numbers are negative 5 and negative 6. So we have x squared minus 5 and x squared minus 6. Then I have to divide by the 3. Hence slide and divide. This doesn't divide evenly, so I throw that back in front. 3x squared minus 5 times x squared minus 2. So again, I'm done for that one. And then I'm going to use slide and divide for this middle part. So we have x to the 4th minus 4x squared, and then 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. So now I'm looking for numbers that multiply to give me negative 32, that sum to give me negative 4. Those two numbers are a positive 4 and a negative 8. So I have x squared plus 4, and then x squared minus 8. Then again, I need to divide by a 2 this time. So that simplifies to give me x squared plus 2 and x squared minus 4. Okay, most of you guys will think that I am done, But this, whoops, this needs to be simplified more. It can be factored one more time. Okay, so this is called the difference of two squares. So the difference of two squares, if you remember, one's minus, one's plus, and they have the exact same values. So I just take the square root of both little terms right there. So x squared minus 4 splits up into two factors, x minus 2, and then another factor of x plus 2. And then I still need to drop down this third factor. And so this is my final answer. Okay, and then you're going to try these two. And so all that essentially is review. Nothing new has been learned. So this is the new things that we are going over today. How do we group? Okay, so grouping. So we're going to factor by grouping when we have 4 terms. Okay, so I want you guys to understand that we do this when we have 4 terms. Now, some of us don't understand what a term is. A term is separated by plus or minus signs. So, if I circle these 3, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms that I underline. So they're separated by the plus or minuses, okay? So anytime I have 4 terms, I am going to use grouping. Okay, so when I use grouping, this is how I do it. I'm going to group together the first 2. So I have to, one, make sure it's in order, and I'm going to group together the last 2. Okay, some people will put parentheses around this, but it's really unnecessary until we get to this part, right? So I just look at what I grouped right here at the beginning, okay? And I ask myself, out of those 2 terms, what is the greatest common factor? So the greatest common factor out of these 2 is an x squared, okay? So then I factor those 2 terms. So I took out a GCF, and then inside the parentheses, I have x plus 6. So I factored out a GCF, and then I wrote this. So basically, if I were to distribute this x squared, I would get back to here, right? X squared times x gives me x cubed. X squared times 6 gives me 6x squared. Okay, so I do that with the first 2 terms. And then I also do that with the last 2 terms now. So now I'm looking at what I put over in blue. So the GCF here is a -5, and then inside the parentheses, I would have an x plus 6. Again, I took out the GCF. They both share a common factor of -5, so -5 times x is -5x, and -5 times a positive 6 gives me -30. Okay, now this should happen. When we factor by grouping, this factor inside this parentheses should be the exact same as it is in this last parentheses. So when you see that happen, you know you are on the right track. Okay, and then this is how we finish with our final step. So we take that factor that is the exact same, and we write it one time. Okay, so I just took that factor and rewrote it once. And then I'm going to have a second factor with the 2 GCFs entered in there. So this is going to go there, so x squared, and this is going to go there, -5. And that is my final answer. That's how I factor by grouping. Okay, so let's try this middle one. Okay, so again, I said sometimes you'll see parentheses, so some people will go like this and put parentheses around the first 2. So all I'm concerned about are the first 2 terms first. So I take out a GCF. This case, it's 2x squared. And then to fill in the rest of it, this is going to be 6x, and this is going to be plus 1. So again, 2x squared times 6x gives me 12x cubed, and 2x squared times 1 gives me back to 2x squared. And then I do the exact same thing for the last terms. Okay, this one again has a GCF of -5. And then this gives me a positive 6 here and a plus 1 there. And again, what am I looking for? Is this value the same as that value? If the answer is yes, we're on the right track. And so now I write that one time. I take both GCFs and I throw them in the second factor. And I'm done. Okay, so again, let's try the last one. So these two have a GCF of 8x squared. I can fill in the parentheses by saying this is x minus 8. And then I group the last two terms. Okay, this has a GCF of 1. Like you'll probably say it doesn't have a GCF. When it doesn't have a GCF, or that's your answer, then we know that it's going to be a +1, a positive 1. So I put a positive 1 there, and then 1 times x minus 8 gives me back to x minus 8 again. And again, is this inside the parentheses same as that? Yes, it is. So now I can write my final answer. So x minus 8 times 8x squared plus 1 is my final answer. And that's how you factor by grouping. Okay, and so you're going to try those two on your own.